Well, hello there, motherfuckers. And as promised, I am doing a review of The Force Awakens. Now, I have seen this movie three times. Three fucking times. So now I feel like I've settled it enough and I could talk about this movie now that I have, picked up on a lot of things. You know, always in movies, the first time around is not always an accurate review. So even a lot of reviews on this channel, I've only seen the movie one time. Um, and sometimes movies could get better on second viewings, for example, Jurassic World. And sometimes they could get worse. Now, like movies like Age of Ultron, I don't know if I would enjoy them a second time around. Perhaps I would, perhaps I would not. It's just the first time around left a real bad taste in my mouth. When a movie like Force Awakens comes along and it was good the first time around, you bet your ass I'm going to see it more than once, and that's exactly what I did. And this was probably, I think I saw this movie more times than I saw Jurassic World in the short span of time. Um, Within a week, just a little bit more than a week. Um, it was, it was crazy seeing this movie this many times, but each time I felt myself liking it more and more, just like all the other Star Wars movies. So this is a re-review. We already know that I liked the movie. Everything I said in the first review still applies. I still stand by a lot of things I said in the first review. But now it's a little bit more structured, and I actually did something really rare. I took notes, which I really don't do because a lot of times in these videos I just kind of talk from the hip. I kind of shoot from the hip, and I just kind of say what's on my mind. But there's a lot of things that I didn't want to forget in this review because I wanted to be comprehensive. I wanted to be a finalized review. And that's really all there is to it. As I said, Star Wars is back. J.J. Abrams should be worshipped as a fucking god. As I said, a lot of people knocked the work he did on Lost, but I think that was a brilliant TV show. Now, Star Trek Into Darkness, I did not like. So, that kind of wavered my opinion on him a little bit. The first Star Trek movie was great, but the second one, to say it left a lot to be desired, would really leave a lot to be desired in the form of criticism. I did not like that movie. I know I did a review on it. I forgot what I said, but I liked it less and less the more I thought about it. And that's a lot of times what does a lot of movies in for me. I'll see it, and then like Age of Ultron, I didn't really hate it as much in the theater as till after the movie when I broke it down all in my head. That's when I just pretty much had enough. And that's a lot of times, this is how my brain works. I just fucking break down movies. I start thinking about the logic and really the whole grand scope of things. Because movies are just so much more than just movies. There's a lot of things else to them that need to be analyzed and discussed. So anyway, this movie's mostly seems like people are liking it. I've heard a lot of complaints though, and of course these complaints are silly. Now I guess some of these arguments I'll throw you a bone. They have some weight to them. They really do. I can see where some people might be coming from when they're talking about certain arguments or why it's not a perfect movie. To me it sort of is, but I really didn't have that many complaints about this, to be quite honest. Everything that seemed a bit iffy to me at first, kind of on the second and third viewing, kind of went away, and it wasn't really that iffy to begin with, and I'll explain why. I wasn't really iffy on this movie, and coming from me, now I know a lot of people are just gonna write me off right away because they say you like the prequels, right away you're a Star Wars fanboy. Yeah, I know that people are gonna say this. They're gonna just bash me because I like the prequels, and that means that I'll just like anything Star Wars pretty much. But if you listen to my arguments, so some people said they wanted me to continue talking about the prequels, specifically Episode 3, and I will do that. in a future video if that's what you guys want. So anyway, let's get to the complaints already. Because I always have a lot of things that we say in these intros, and we want to get to the meat and potatoes already. So I mean, one of the biggest well, not one of the biggest, but let's start off with like one that's sort of in the middle, maybe not even that big of a deal. But Rilo Ken, the way Kylo Ren, rather, I keep making that fucking mistake by being like dyslexic with his name. Kylo Ren. What a great villain. We'll throw in some pros and stuff in here as well. But what a great villain. What a great performance. But people are knocking the way how the actor looks when he takes off the mask for the first time. And by the way, there are spoilers in this video, so I'll put it down here for all the fucking crybabies, because the thing is, I don't understand why you watch a video about Star Wars if you haven't seen it yet. You're just asking for it, basically. You're asking to get raped by spoilers, but I will put it there anyway because I don't want to get flagged or anything. So I will put the spoilers alert, down here. And the title. Anyway, so how does he look? I didn't really have a problem with the way the guy looked. I've heard everything from Screech, which was actually kind of funny, and I kind of can see the criticisms. He doesn't look tough, but then again, does he really have to? And this is like an argument that is made throughout time about how certain characters are supposed to look, and it's really left up to taste, really. Do you need your villains to look menacing? But the thing was, when you really think about it, if they made Kylo look menacing, would it really be carrying the point home? When he takes off the mask, I mean, and you see what he looks like even before he's in front of Han Solo on the bridge, where he inevitably meets his fate, that being Han Solo. You know that this is his son, and they want you to feel sympathetic towards this character. He's struggling. He says that he's being torn apart. He says this right in front of his father's face. Now, if you had a hard look to this character, would you really feel as sympathetic as if he had a more light-hearted, acceptable look to him? And I don't know if I'm choosing the right words to describe his appearance, but a more innocent look, perhaps, than a straightforward badass. Now, I guess because this is Han Solo's son, many people want him to have the harder look to him, the more of the scoundrel look. But the thing is, I really just didn't have a problem with the way how Kylo or Ben Solo looked. I thought he looked fine. I thought that this is basically a boy. What is he, 18, 19, 20 at the most? He's a young man. He basically hasn't even grown into his looks yet, you could say. So I really didn't have a problem with that, but a lot of people do. And Pittsburgh Dad, which is also another great YouTuber on here, who does a lot of parody vids, in character, of course. And he even was the one who made the comparison about Kylo Ren looking like Screech from Saved by the Bell, in case people don't know who Screech is. So the appearance is something that's going to be left up for debate for a long time. And this is also something that we have to talk about, is that when Darth Vader was unmasked in Return of the Jedi, many people were taken aback with the way how he looked. And this was even edited in the special editions. Always it seems like the unmasking of characters. There's always something about the look of the character, and a lot of times the look translates to their acceptance of a character, and I could kind of see how that might be. If Han Solo looked a different way, would we take the character to heart in a different way? And we probably would. Um, but in this case, the message that they were trying to convey, the story they were trying to convey, just everything encompassing within itself, I felt that the way that Ben Solo, Kylo Ren looked was just fine. I didn't have a problem with it. And the guy is such a great actor, it really didn't matter to me. I was so taken by his performance that the guy could have looked like fucking Big Bird and I would have been okay. And what people are saying about his nose, it might not be too far off, but that's besides the point. Han Solo dying. Now, as I said during my first viewing of this film, one of my friends shouted out "gay" when he fell into the bottomless pit. That's somehow these structures in Star Wars. There's always these bottomless pits. It was there in A New Hope. There was one in Empire Strikes Back. You want to count? Oh, well, there's the chasm that Darth Vader throws the Emperor down. There's all these fucking pits and silos and fucking giant gaping holes. I mean, every single place. If you even want to consider the Sarlacc pit to be a pit of some, is technically a pit, I guess. George Lucas and just anybody who gets involved in Star Wars is obsessed with pits, or at this point, it's pretty much tradition that a character in each movie must be thrown down a chasm or a pit of some sort. Once again, just like the looks of Kylo Ren unmasked, this fit the bill perfectly when it came to the storytelling. What a better way to get Kylo Ren over as this ferocious villain, which I'm guessing many people were believing that he was going to die, probably at the hands of Rey, when they were battling it out. But he did not, and he is surviving on. And as Snoke said, he will be he will get to the next level of his training. So that would mean that he will be more powerful in Episode 8. And that's pretty exciting because he came off as a very cool character in this one as well, and one of the best villains. I mean, I have no choice but to surpass him past Darth Maul and Count Dooku. There was just much more story there to him. He is like the next Darth Vader. There's so much mystique and well, there's not as much mystery as there was with Vader, where we had to wait a whole movie to find out exactly who he was. But there's still how evil has been become, striking down his own father, making him plummet into a fucking bottomless pit. um a lot of people are unhappy about this because they love the Han Solo character. They love him and they don't want to let him go. And the thing is, it had already been stated that the main cast was not going to be the main focus of this film. That's the reason why they introduced new characters in Rey, Finn, and Poe, because these are the new characters. It's pretty obvious. Rey is like the new Luke. Finn, guess you could say he's the new Han Solo of sorts. Um, you know, or I don't know. I guess you could intertwine that with Poe if you want. Whoever's don't want to think of anybody as replacements, but similar personalities, similar characters. A scoundrel. Just you could pretty much draw the lines to who has similarities, and we all have uh, these characters that kind of resemble one another in the Star Wars universe. Dash Rendar being like Han Solo and such. We could go on and on. And even though that's the EU, um, still there's like this big giant loop, and characters seem to be similar. Well, in the movies they're all different, but anyway, I thought it was a brilliant idea to kill off Han Solo in the way that they did, and the way the scene was shot with the lighting was perfect. And they killed off Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope. Well, a lot of people weren't happy about that as well. But George Lucas's reasoning behind this was he had nothing to do with him in the movie after the Death Star, and that's kind of it. I mean, Han Solo did kind of all he could do, and it led to him, basically, halfway through the movie, his purpose is to bring Ben back home, to bring Kylo Ren back home to himself and Leia. And he fails. He tries and he almost succeeds, but he fails in the end. And it was perfect storytelling. So this is kind of just this is kind of not anything about movie or storytelling quality. It's just more about you not being able to let go of the character. He was a great character, and he was in 4 different movies. He was throughout this whole entire movie, basically. Han Solo is there like 30, 40 minutes into the film, and he's there for the next hour and 20 minutes or so. I don't know the exact time. But he's there for a great deal of the film. So I don't really see, how they didn't do enough fan service, and that's the thing. You cannot please everybody, and I said this in the initial review. You cannot please everybody. That's impossible. There's no way you could accomplish that. If you choose to please everybody, you're gonna end up with a fucking shitty ass movie. You have to do what you want to do in the film. You don't want to displease everybody. You don't want to fucking bring another Jar Jar Binks character into the mix, but you sure as hell don't want to just worry, oh, if I make this decision, it might displease the fans. I'm pretty sure J.J. Abrams ran that by himself 1,000 times in his head. And I'm really looking forward to, like, getting the Blu-ray and seeing what J.J. Abrams' ideas were behind a lot of these scenes, because they're fucking downright brilliant. And I thought it was a great decision. And I might be in the minority on that one, but I thought that it was a good way of getting a character over. And I thought it was a great way of telling a story that made sense. It made a lot of sense that he killed Han Solo. If you say that it didn't make sense, then I don't know. You just didn't really understand the story. Story's not too hard to understand, but it's more just this. You're just in denial because you missed the character. I know. I'll miss him too. Do I wish he lived? Well, sort of in a way, but in the bigger picture, I'm happy that they killed him off. I mean, it's just honestly. The other complaint, not enough Skywalker, not enough this, not enough that, not enough everything. 2 hours and 16 minutes, and we built new characters. We introduced an all one, and we gave him a lot to do, and still, it's not good enough for people. We needed to have Luke Skywalker in there as well. And when you really encompass all the complaints at the end of this review, you will see how silly it really is that people are complaining about this shit. So, Skywalker ends up being there at the end of the movie. The whole, they are trying to, get BB-8, and R2 together so they could fucking, complete the map together. And that might not be the whole story. They're trying to overcome the First Order and all that. But everybody wants to find out what happened to Luke. Han's curious about it, Leia's curious about it, but they've got to do a couple of things first before they're able to do that. So it made sense to show him at the end, because the whole struggle was to complete that map, figure out what was going on. And I'm not really entirely sure if they knew that R2 had the map within him. I think it's more like a surprise kind of, but they wanted to figure out where he was. And when you finally find out where he is at the end, it's pretty satisfying. And if they showed him earlier in the movie, it just would have clustered things up a lot. It would have made this movie feel very congested. So many characters, so many things going on. And plus, like, I want to just say, that they wanted, Luke to be in this more. And also, people complained about all these other characters being brought back and the way they introduced them little by little by little by little. The thing is, that would have really taken away from so much of it if they just showed you everything at once. I mean, you didn't like how they introduced Finn to you? Wasn't that a really powerful scene with the blood, being etched across his face, and he starts freaking out? I mean, the way how this movie, the characters were conveyed and introduced was downright perfect. Just to throw everybody out there right away would just feel like a total clusterfuck. It really would. So, the intros one by one, and thing is, because these characters had no reason to appear, so when they finally do appear, we appreciate them. That's why I don't understand this. They didn't like it because it seemed like a formulaic approach. Every half an hour throughout the movie, we're introduced to Han Solo, then Leia, then C3PO in the same scene with Leia. And the thing was, okay, so it was just kind of two introductions there, and people want to count the Millennium Falcon. And people also praised that scene with the Millennium Falcon because it wasn't like the ship was just there in a hangar with triumphant music, as Hello Greedo put it on his channel. Exactly, they just showed it to you, but there's no reason. I mean, you want just all this shit just thrown at you all at once. Do you know anything about pacing an audience? You want to just make it fucking nauseating just how much nostalgia is being thrown at you at once. They're bringing it to you in small increments for a reason, because it's not all about this nostalgia. People keep saying that it's not. It's about furthering a classic story and adding another branch to it for the future generations. It's not all about you and your fucking nostalgia already. And we're getting something great, something we waited a long time for, and complaining about it. This is just what makes me sick about certain fucking Star Wars fans. So I was fine with it. Another complaint, and this is even from the people that enjoyed the movie, that there was no words exchanged between Luke and Rey at the end when they're, on top of the fucking cliff. Um, yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. Many people complained in the prequels that there was a lot of useless dialogue, a lot of pointing out of the obvious. There was no reason why there should be any dialogue, and J.J. Abrams is great for not adding any dialogue. It was pretty obvious here what's going to happen next with the outreached hand with the lightsaber, and Luke kind of looking, deep in thought, should he join up with the resistance again and fight against Kylo Ren when he feels that he has failed his friends, and that's the reason why he's there in the first place in exile. Um, yeah, I mean, this was just a powerful scene. There's no dialogue, anything. If Ray said, "Oh, Master Skywalker, come back," to your friend, like, it just wouldn't be good, So you complain when there's useless dialogue, and there's an overabundance of dialogue, but then when they don't have it and they let the scene speak for itself through emotion, through context clues, you can pretty much figure it out. There ain't even any clues really to figure out. You know what's going on. um there's no need for dialogue, so you're going to complain that there's no dialogue where there doesn't need to be any dialogue. And in the past you have complained that there is too much dialogue, so you see where this is a fucking problem in the argument. You can't have it both ways. It doesn't make sense, and it just makes it look like a damn goof, pretty much. You're complaining about something that you had previously complained against. Okay, anyway, Captain Phasma, not being in the movie enough. Just didn't really bother me. Um, she's just kind of the fucking sergeant, nice armor and everything, but there really didn't need to be a whole lot of her. They're saying that she's going to play a bigger role in episode 8, but this is kind of like a minor character. Um, Perhaps she'll end up being the Boba Fett of the Star Wars universe, where she's a underutilized side character, and she kind of just has that cult following, and I can kind of see why. It has a very attractive look with the armor, but I don't really see how this really is a valid complaint. There's so many other great characters. You wanted them to spend more time on Phasma when, and they should have cut more time out of Kylo Ren. Another New Order character. I mean, come on. I This one is probably the weakest argument so far. Um, that is a New Hope remake. It's has similarities to A New Hope. Jakku is like Tatooine. In fact, when I first saw it in the trailer, I thought it was Tatooine. I think a lot of people thought that. I didn't think they thought that it was a new planet. They thought it was Tatooine. It looks exactly like it. There's really no difference in the way how it looks. Looks the same way. The marketplace sort of resembles a more beaten up Mos Eisley. Um, As far as it being a remake, there's another Death Star like battle station. This time it's built around the planet. I don't really see how this is so much of a remake. It really isn't. There's similarities to a lot of the movies. You can't really say that this is a remake. There's similarities, yes. Um, the scene with Poe and Finn piloting the X-wing will kind of be reminiscent of Luke and Han in the Millennium Falcon. The droids coming on the sand world, to find the main character, Rey, is Luke. Um, in this scenario. So yeah, there are those similarities. There's an Imperial First Order attack on in the first scene of the movie. Instead of it taking place on a ship, it takes place on land on a planet. There's a lot of similarities, but it's not a remake. The thing is, they wanted to build on the classic Star Wars formula so it doesn't feel so different for people. That's my take on it, at least. Don't know what the official reason was. But yes, there are always similarities. And this is something that's called the ring theory for the Star Wars prequels, where they say that there's like definite connections to the original trilogy. There's similar scenes, but that doesn't mean that it's a complete fucking remake. In a way that's like a real huge insult. It really is that this is not an original piece. If you don't think that this movie's original, then you're just being dishonest. Not a remake at all. Does it share a lot of similar qualities? Yes, but is it the same movie? Absolutely fucking not. Yeah. So anyway, a lot more pros I just want to add into this is that um, Ray and Finn were amazing new characters in this movie. And that is why I don't have any problems with a character not getting enough screen time. It was all about these two characters as far as protagonists go. Kylo Ren for the antagonist, everybody received ample screen time. There, that's why I'm saying there should be no arguments. There shouldn't be any debates about, was this movie handled well enough with the characters? We're introduced to Rey. We know nothing about her. And by the end of the movie, we feel like we know her inside and out. Now, there's a couple of mysteries, but we could kind of figure things out. So, let's kind of discuss that right now. So, when she touches Luke's lightsaber in that basement scene, um, you can see that she is being sort of taken away from Luke, it would appear. And the one that's grabbing her and telling her to come on is actually that guy on Jakku, that creature that she's selling the parts that she scavenges. And that's him. And in a way he kind of was maybe like her caretaker or something like that. I don't know, but he was moving her along, um and she's crying out to somebody as a ship takes off. And I think that was probably Luke before he went into exile. He maybe thought that Rey would be safe on that planet. And weird thing is, it looks exactly like Tatooine, which was his home world. Um, so we do know a lot about Rey. We know that she has a past. That she's waiting for somebody to come back that will never come back to her, and she feels attached to Jakku. She can't leave Jakku, and she finally is forced into realizing this fact. The way how she discovers her force powers is also another thing that's up for debate. A lot of people thought that she shouldn't have done so well against Kylo Ren. But the thing was, people had to realize that Kylo Ren was injured. He was shot by a Wookiee bowcaster, by Chewbacca himself, like in the hip, like on the side of his abdomen. He's constantly, banging on it, and he's injured. So really, that he would start, losing a fight to an up and coming Jedi kind of does make sense. She is becoming stronger. She does know how to use the Force to a point. She probably might have used it in the past as a kid. She's probably one of Luke's surviving students that Kylo Ren did not slaughter. And that is probably why she's a little bit better with the lightsaber than we previously thought when we first saw her. So I didn't really have a complaint against that. He's injured. Also, Kylo's training is not complete. He is still an apprentice, and he's not like, even though Darth Vader was still an apprentice, Vader was more experienced. He was already a Jedi Knight. Um, so you can't really compare the two villains like that and expect him to fight at that level. Uh, Now Finn was another great character. The story told right from the beginning about him being a traitor to the First Order, that he couldn't be a killer. The way how he freaks out in the beginning when the blood is etched across his face, I thought all of that was really amazing, and the way how Kylo Ren looks at him on the battlefield as he's shaking with terror. All that stuff was so well done, and the actor, he's hilarious. A lot of funny jokes in there, very witty. I was a big fan of this character, big fan of both characters. And Poe, I can't wait to see Rogue One. Uh, Poe just came across as really cool to me. From the first scene, he really just had that Han Solo air about him. Just he really felt more Star Warsy than maybe even Finn or Ray. Um, he just really fit in with that type of whole pilot thing. He just kind of felt like one of those characters, like a way cooler Wedge Antilles or something along those lines. Um, I don't know. I just thought that, he really came across as a very likable character, even though he didn't have excessive screen time. But we will see, and that's the reason why we'll see enough of him in Rogue One, where he's probably going to be the main character. So overall, as you can see, really enjoyed this film. Uh, I think it's better than the prequels. I don't know how I would rank it, if any of if it's better than any of the original trilogy movies. That remains to be seen after way more multiple viewings of this one. But um, I was pretty pleased with this film. I thought that it delivered. I thought that it did a great job of building the characters, way better than I expected it was going to. And I took to these characters almost right away, like during the first viewing of this movie. They were just introduced and just carried about in such a way where I didn't really have a choice but to allow them into my heart. And uh, definitely looking forward to this trilogy being completed, this post trilogy, I guess you could say, whatever they're planning on calling it. Really curious to see what the other director is going to do, because it won't be J.J. Abrams for episode 8. Kind of a little bit disappointed with that. I probably would have liked to see him, hang around and see what he could do for episode 8, but, they are trying to switch things up a bit and get some new, fresh ideas out there. So I support that. And once again, it's all about letting go. When it comes to these things like this, these series, we have to let go. Just like letting go of Han Solo, we got to let go of J.J. Abrams. He did a good job, but the next one up is kind of, his name escapes me at the moment, but I have faith. I had doubts about this movie, doubts about how this was going to go, and I was pretty satisfied by it. So this has been a really long fucking review, 34 minutes now. But I feel like I covered and I said pretty much what I want to say in this review, addressing the complaints, counter arguments and all that. So basically, what did you think about this movie? Did I change your mind by counter arguing some of these points here, some of these silly arguments, some of these arguments that are actually have some weight to them, but still, I feel like I managed to debunk them to a decent level. So did I change your mind? Did I strengthen your your opposition to a lot of these things even more? Um, you know, how did you feel about it? Anyway, so comment, tell me more videos you want to see. If you want to see more Star Wars videos, any more specific things you want me to talk about, the movies in general, or this movie that you want me to touch on, go ahead. I'm pretty sure I forgot about a lot of stuff as well. And if I think of them, I will make another video, of course. But until then, all right, motherfuckers.